Picture this: for years, a quiet but powerful pipeline of nickel flowed from Canada to the United States, worth nearly $3.9 billion a year. This wasn't just any metal. This was the lifeblood of America's electric vehicle dreams, the metal that made batteries last longer, charge faster, and power the future of clean transportation. And then, in one shocking move, that pipeline was shut down. Canada turned off the tap. Why? Because of a decision straight from the Trump playbook, a 20% tariff on electric vehicle imports, slapped not just on China, but also on Canada, one of America's oldest allies. No carve-outs. No exceptions. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe, hit like, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the real stories shaking the global economy. Nickel, the hidden power behind the EV revolution. Nickel might not sound glamorous, but in the EV industry, it's king. Without it, you can't build the high-performance batteries that Tesla, Ford, GM, and Rivian need. And the US? It doesn't have enough nickel mines to keep up with demand. That's why Canada, with its massive reserves and advanced refining facilities, has been a vital partner. For decades, this steady flow of Canadian nickel ensured that US automakers stayed competitive in the global market. The two countries had worked hand in hand to make North America a serious player in the EV race, building supply chains that were meant to last for generations. From ally to target overnight. When Trump announced his EV tariff, the intention was to send a message to China, the world's biggest electric vehicle producer. But instead of focusing only on Beijing, the White House applied a blanket 20% import tax to everyone, allies included. For Canada, this was more than a policy disagreement, it was a betrayal. Ottawa had spent years aligning its clean energy strategies with Washington's goals, often at significant political and financial cost. They had retooled factories, secured raw material supply chains, and made sure the US had reliable access to Canadian nickel. Now, in a single move, that trust was shattered, leaving Canada to question the stability of their most important trade relationship. Canada strikes back. So when that tariff hit, Canada didn't wait for negotiations. They retaliated, and they hit where it hurt most. Ottawa announced an immediate halt to nickel exports to the US. This was both a strategic and symbolic move. Strategic, because without Canadian nickel, American EV production costs would soar and timelines would slow. Symbolic, because it made one thing clear: if you treat your friends like enemies, they'll stop acting like friends. And this was no empty threat. Canada controls some of the highest-grade nickel reserves in the world, and they know exactly how much leverage that gives them in a rapidly growing clean energy market. Why nickel matters so much? Nickel is a key component in lithium-ion batteries, especially the type used in long-range EVs. It increases energy density, which means cars can go farther on a single charge. Without access to high-quality nickel, automakers may have to rely on lower-grade sources, which can hurt performance and raise costs. And with EV adoption still in its growth phase, every delay or cost increase risks pushing consumers back toward gas-powered cars. Worse yet, a shortage of quality nickel could slow innovation, forcing automakers to scale back ambitious production targets and giving international competitors a major advantage in the race for EV dominance. Speed and surprise in Canada's response. What shocked many observers was how quickly Canada moved. Trade disputes usually involve months of talks and legal battles. But Ottawa skipped all that. They wanted to send a clear signal that Canada's resources would not be taken for granted. And they have the leverage to do it. Nickel is in high demand worldwide, and Canada can sell to South Korea, Japan, the EU, or even China without missing a beat. By acting without hesitation, Canada also showed other allies that it won't hesitate to defend its interests when targeted, even if it means disrupting a decades-old economic partnership. Global demand, new buyers. With global EV demand soaring, Canada's nickel won't sit idle. Other countries are already lining up to secure supply contracts. China, despite having big operations in Indonesia, still imports premium-grade nickel for certain products. Europe, pushing aggressively toward EV adoption, would happily pay a premium for Canada's cleanly mined and processed nickel. This gives Ottawa plenty of options, while leaving Washington with fewer. Nations in Southeast Asia, as well as India's growing EV sector, are also expressing interest, making it clear that Canada has a buyer's market and can diversify away from US dependence with minimal financial pain. The ripple effect on the US auto industry. Industry experts warn that without Canadian nickel, U.S. automakers will face higher production costs and possible delays in launching new EV models. Some may be forced to turn to suppliers in Indonesia or the Philippines, where environmental and labor standards are lower. That could hurt the image of American-made EVs, especially in an age where consumers care about sustainable sourcing. On top of that, shifting supply chains is expensive and time-consuming, meaning U.S. manufacturers could lose precious market share to European and Asian competitors who already have secure nickel contracts in place. Political fallout between neighbors. The U.S. and Canada have long been more than neighbors, they've been partners through wars, economic challenges, and trade alliances. This nickel dispute shows how fragile that partnership can be when political moves ignore decades of trust. Canadian officials have openly said that they won't let their industries be collateral damage in Washington's trade wars. The fallout could also impact cooperation in other areas, from defense to climate policy, as resentment over economic betrayal spills into broader diplomatic conversations between the two nations. Canada's bigger strategy. Behind the scenes, Canada is talking to other nickel-rich countries like Australia and Botswana about forming a coordinated supply alliance. If that happens, the U.S. could face an even bigger challenge, competing not just with China for EV metals, but with a coalition of friendly nations who no longer see Washington as a reliable trade partner. Such an alliance could also influence global nickel pricing, giving its members more control over who gets supply, at what cost, and under what conditions, fundamentally reshaping the future of the EV resource market. Déjà vu for Trump's trade policies. This isn't the first time Trump's tariffs have sparked retaliation. In his first term, similar moves on steel and aluminum angered Canada, Europe, and Mexico. In some cases, American farmers and manufacturers took heavy losses. Critics say the EV tariff could follow the same path, hurting U.S. industries more than it helps them. Many trade analysts warn that repeating the same aggressive strategy without securing exemptions for allies risks isolating America from key partners, potentially undermining long-term economic stability in exchange for short-lived political wins at home. Market reaction: prices on the rise. The moment Canada's nickel export ban was announced, global nickel prices jumped. Investors expect supply to tighten further if the dispute continues. For American automakers already fighting high inflation and global competition, unstable prices are a nightmare. A prolonged shortage could trigger a chain reaction, with higher costs passed on to consumers, slowing EV adoption, and further straining relationships with suppliers. Meanwhile, other nations may use the uncertainty to lock in long-term nickel deals, leaving the U.S. at a strategic disadvantage for years to come. Can this be fixed? Rumors suggest that quiet back-channel talks have started between Ottawa and Washington. But Canada is holding firm: no nickel exports until the EV tariff is lifted, or at least until Canada gets an exemption. The Trump administration insists the tariff is necessary to protect American jobs, even if that means short-term pain. However, with U.S. automakers lobbying hard for a resolution and Canadian officials making it clear they won't back down, any deal will require compromise, and the longer both sides dig in, the greater the damage to the EV industry's shared future. The risk of losing the EV race. Ironically, both countries share the same goal: building a strong EV industry to compete with China. But this tariff war is slowing both of them down. Meanwhile, China, Europe, and South Korea are moving full steam ahead, locking in resources and expanding production. Every month of delay puts North America further behind. Automakers scramble for alternatives. Some U.S. companies are exploring deals with Indonesian suppliers, but these come with long shipping times, environmental controversies, and volatile politics. Others are lobbying hard for the U.S. to make peace with Canada quickly. Bigger lessons for the future. This fight is about more than nickel. It's a warning that in the new world of clean energy, control over resources is power. If allies like Canada and the US can't work together, they may hand the EV market to their competitors. And once a supply chain is broken, rebuilding it is slow, expensive, and sometimes impossible. So, was Canada right to retaliate? Or should they have tried to negotiate first? Either way, this marks a turning point in U.S.-Canada relations. The impact could last decades, reshaping not just the EV industry, but the entire trade relationship between the two nations. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video so more people can understand what's really going on.